Hello everyone, welcome back to the Mr. Smelly Fragrance Review Show. So today we're going to be having a look at my top 10 inexpensive powerhouse fragrances. What do we mean by a powerhouse fragrance? Well, we're talking about a fragrance that makes you feel like a powerhouse. In fact, a fragrance that makes you feel something like these guys.
And here he is, the big Russian, showing why he is the man to beat in this year's competition. Just look at that technique. And little man here, showboating here. Well, I'm not sure that's a great idea. Let's see how he does. Oh dear, nobody wanted to see that. Oh, just look at that technique. A great example for any youngsters watching here. This is what years of practice can achieve. Now that's a great start, a great entry. Look at this, it's an ambitious program he's got on here. Oh, that's beautiful. And a perfect landing. This is a big weight. Let's see what he can do here. Oh, this is good. This is good. Oh, look at that. A perfect finish to the maneuver. De La Fuente from Spain now. His last attempt to regain that gold medal position on the bars. And he's done it. That is pure quality.
Hello everyone, welcome back to all of you in the Smelly Army. So today we're going to be having a look at my top 10 inexpensive powerhouse fragrances. So powerhouse fragrances, what do we mean by that? Well, for me, a powerhouse fragrance is really a genre of fragrance. I'm not necessarily here talking about powerful performing fragrances in general. I'm not talking about beast mode fragrances. I've made other videos about that subject. But here we have really a genre, a style, maybe even an era of fragrances, mainly dating from the 1970s and 80s, though not necessarily. And we come to think of them and refer to them nowadays often as powerhouse fragrances. Most of them, well, all the ones in this list, are still available today in modern formulations. Sometimes a bit tweaked from the old ones, and a lot of these type of fragrance, because they're not so fashionable anymore, can be picked up online for really amazing prices. So I thought I'd share my top 10, or it's turned out to be 12 because of a couple of honourable mentions today. If you like this kind of video, don't forget to subscribe by clicking the button down there, and then you won't miss any of my future content. Alright then, so let's kick it off. 1987 saw the release of this one. It's Salvador Dali Poram Eau de Toilette, an absolutely incredible fragrance, which I'm a huge fan of. This is a very, very potent fragrance, and of course the brand is themed after, or named after, the incredible artist who died actually in 1989, but they subsequently released a brand in his name. The perfumer on this one is actually Thierry Vasseur, the man who's now the head honcho in charge of making perfumes at the House of Guerlain. And this is pretty different to most of the stuff he's produced for them, I can tell you. This is a very dark, powerful, rich and masculine kind of 80s style fragrance. You used to be able to pick this up really cheaply, for kind of £18 and stuff. I checked today, and the 100ml bottle I found for around about 30 something pounds online here in the UK. So it's not the cheapest of the cheap, but still really great value for a lovely bottle design based on one of his pieces of art. Lots of different notes in this one. I've got some of these written down. We've got clary sage, basil, anise, patchouli, oak moss, florals, notes in there, loads of them, vanilla, and kind of a herbal green fragrance with a hint of licorice and anise, and a very dark, brooding type of masculine, almost, you could call it an aromatic fougere, woody aromatic. It's difficult to define this one, but it's very dark and brooding, green and herbal, and a little bit licorice-like at the same time. It's the kind of fragrance you'd probably want to wear a black shirt or dress all in black, or a black leather jacket when you wear it. Very potent, great performance for me, and really, really a complex, interesting and enigmatic fragrance, much like the artist himself, Salvador Dali. Okay guys, so let's move on to the next one. These are in no particular order. I'm not saying that one's number one, but they're just, in the end, 12, not 10. Real great ones. Next up then, doesn't get enough talk in the Fragcom, it's Lagerfeld Classic. I've got an old bottle here, a vintage one, when it was called Lagerfeld Eau de Cologne, but you can now find this for really great prices, about £22.95 I found. I think it was 150ml on All Beauty. 1978 release. And again, definitely very much in the powerhouse kind of fragrance mold, although very different to some of the others in this list. So as the juice colour kind of suggests, it has this kind of orangey thing. It kind of has an orange liqueur kind of thing, I think, going on. It reminds me weirdly a bit of the drink Cointreau, if you've ever tried that one. Some of the other notes in this one, you've got a sweet orange top note. There's aldehydes listed. Leather and patchouli are, but maybe not leather, no, so not really leathery. tobacco, patchouli and amber in here. So it's warming, it's a little bit of a boozy kind of thing. And again, it's very potent. It's got that kind of patchouli laden masculine vibe that you got in things like Givenchy Gentleman from the 1970s, but it's mixed in with this boozy, very, very powerful, very old school aura, and a real great one. Even in the modern formulation, they've all been tweaked a bit and they won't smell quite the same. I really like my old bottle, but maybe the change over the years in this bottle has happened and it doesn't smell how it actually should have when they first put it on the shelves. So you're fine, I think, often to go, especially with the prices, to go with the modern versions. Okay, next up then, we're going for a true classic of all time. It's Aramis Eau de Toilette, the original Aramis by Aramis. Loads of flankers to this one. 1966 this one was released. And it's a spicy, leathery fragrance. Very, very masculine again. There's patchouli in there. There are quite a few different floral notes. It's quite complicated. It's, you know, it's classic French perfumery from the perfumer Bernard Chant. So don't write these off as just sort of bang in your face, over the top, hairy, they're you know, hairy chest fragrances. They're floral, they're complex, there's fresh notes, there's sweetness, there's spices. There are very long note listings usually. It's not just a bit of bergamot and some ambroxan like we get today. And this one really delivers something quite special and quite enigmatic. I think apparently it was Sammy Davis Jr.'s signature scent, and it still stands up. If you want a masculine powerhouse today, you can pick a 110ml bottle up for £19.95. Well worth the blind buy if you're interested to try a true classic fragrance, a famous one, a legendary fragrance. Next up, it's one of the famous beast mode type fragrances. It's Lapidus Poram from 1987. So the house of Ted Lapidus bought this one in 1987. And Lapidus Poram, you can pick this up 100ml. I found it for £16 something online. Great bottle design, looks like something in someone's bathroom in the 1980s. That really just classic, characteristic style of bottle. Looks like it should have come out in the early 80s more than the late 80s. Maybe Lapidus were a bit behind. And if you like things like Kouros from Yves Saint Laurent, then you're going to like things like this too. It's got a certain animalic funk in the base. It's actually very fruity. I've got a bit on here. This is really quite a polarizing scent. It's a real great performer. It's got a pineapple note, an everything but the kitchen sink type of note listing. There's all the kind of usual leathery notes and musk that are in so many of these powerhouses. A certain sweetness. There's a honey note in this one as well. And honey actually, despite being sweet and a very likable thing and smell, can give off an almost kind of animalic undertone. And this one definitely has that. So it's big, it's powerful, it's everything louder than everything else. And for the price, you might not wear it with your girlfriend or your wife every day, not if you're hoping to have any fun that evening, but just to have in your collection if you're into this concept of the old school powerhouse. This is a true legend. Something a bit different now. We need a bit of sweetness in this list. So these fragrances, they don't have to be green, they don't have to be a certain fragrance style, but they have to just conform with that vibe of the powerhouse fragrance from the 1980s. And this one definitely does for me. It's Calvin Klein Obsession for Men, released in 1986. Quite a sweet fragrance. Most prominently in this one I get cinnamon. There is also some patchouli, giving it that slightly old school 70s 80s masculine scent vibe. There's vanilla. Someone online described it as smelling like cinnamon cola, and that's not a bad description, but with this kind of undertone of the 70s style patchouli and stuff, it still has an old school vibe, in no way a gourmand, but mixed with a sort of appealing sweetness. So great for for colder weather, when you want a warmer fragrance maybe to contrast with that, and very nice to have in the collection. Again, you know, don't know if you're always going to get loads of compliments of people with this one. Don't know how people react to this one nowadays. Old school vibe. Superdrug in the UK had a 125ml bottle for the incredible price of not £123, £23. I think that's a steal. Now then, we're going for another one where I'm lucky enough to have the vintage, but you guys can pick up a modern version really cheaply. Versace L'Homme. This one came out in 1986. Definitely a powerhouse fragrance. Not sure if the reformulation modern one quite will satisfy those who are familiar with the vintage, but it's broadly pretty similar. We've got quite a nice citrusy opening on this one. It's one of the more citrusy ones in the list in terms of how it opens up. There's lemon, there's basil, there's a bit of petitgrain in there too, pimento pepper as well. Down in the base though, we've got musky, manly undertones that will perhaps remind some people in a way of Kouros. It's a little bit more like a fresh slightly brighter version of Yves Saint Laurent's Chorus. So definitely not for everybody. I think it's really, really interesting. Love having it in the collection. Mine's perhaps got some real oak moss that you can't really use anymore, but the modern version you can get extremely cheaply. I found one for £24 something. I think that was 100ml. That was actually on All Beauty, so you know, a very, very cheap fragrance, and I'm sure you can get it in the States and elsewhere for roughly equivalent prices. The next one perhaps shouldn't be in the list. I've cheated because it's not really a cheapie, but it's kind of cheap for what it is. It's Duc de Vervon's L'Extrême. This came out first in 1991. And it definitely conforms to that 80s powerhouse kind of smell. It's a green aromatic fougere fragrance, very much all about the lavender and the oak moss. And unlike the slightly more refined and smooth Fougère Royale from Houbigant, which actually came out later, it was reissued as kind of the first ever Fougère fragrance. They reissued it though in 2011. This one, a bit more rugged, a bit more 80s smelling. It's kind of like a niche version of Drakkar Noir. I do love the bottle. The price I found online was £59.95 on All Beauty. Considering Houbigant is a niche brand, it's kind of inexpensive for what it is, I think. So kind of a little bit of a bargain, I think, if you like this kind of fragrance. But I've kind of cheated a bit to put that one in the list. But I do really love Duc de Vervon's L'Extrême. Okay, we've got Oscar de la Renta pour Louis next. Legendary fragrance, 1980 release. Many people say this is very soapy, so there is a kind of nice soapy clean element. I've actually got a vintage eau de toilette splash. But you can actually pick up a 100ml or 90, I think they do a weird 90ml size. It's like £20 or even cheaper online in the UK. There's juniper in here, very nice kind of fresh note, which you get to flavour gin. Aldehydes are present. We've got leather, lavender, oak moss and floral notes. Many people compare this to Chanel's Antaeus, and some people even prefer it. So if you like a kind of leathery fragrance with a little bit of an element of a clean, soapy freshness, this really delivers that. It's very classy, very elegant. People always in the reviews on Fragrantica say you should dress up in a suit and look your best for this one. And for the price, you can get the modern version on some websites. I think it's a real great one, so maybe blind buy. Love the bottle design, and I am lucky to have an old version. But again, I really like my old version, but the actual juice in there has aged a bit, so I'm probably not smelling what I would have smelled if I'd opened this up in 1980. I kind of like the way they age, like a fine wine. But a lot of times you might, if you like the top notes and the freshness, you might be better off just to get the modern formulation, particularly considering the price. Next up in the list, Aramis Havana. Two from Aramis in this list. Could have done a lot more, I know. I only happen to own these two. Let me know in the comments, by the way, which ones I've left out, guys. Havana, of course, a tobacco fragrance. First released in 1994. Very potent stuff, a very dry tobacco note. It's not tobacco vanille or Naxos from Xerjoff. It's a dry green kind of tobacco leaf accord. There's an orange note in the opening, a bit of fir. There's oak moss and vetiver. It's very dry and woody and arid and very grown up, very masculine, and a real old school kind of take on tobacco, although kind of different to the 80s powerhouses. It's got something really unique. I do have a vintage bottle too. They changed the design, and again, under £20 you can pick this one up for easily for your 100ml. Really, really nice fragrance if you like an old school powerhouse vibe with the unique twist of tobacco. Next up then, it's the last one in the list, and this is Xerius from Givenchy. This is one of the best ones in the list in my opinion. Again, here I am lucky to have the lovely Art Deco design that came out in '86. It's now available in the Parfums Mythiques series, reissued in a very nice but not like this bottle. I think it's 30 something pounds for, maybe even just under £30 I found it on one site for your 100ml bottle in the reissue series. Really amazing, sophisticated aromatic fougere fragrance with a twist of exoticism. They took the aromatic fougere to a new place with this one. There's loads of notes in it. We've got clary sage, amber, incense, vetiver, cypress, guaiac wood. There's a bit of sweetness in here, in fact. There's floral notes. There's this incense note giving it this slightly mysterious, exotic twist, while still kind of smelling a little bit fresh and soapy and almost barbershop-ish. But it's just magical. It's taken the barbershop to a new level, really, and remarkable juice. Really, really one of my favourites in the list, if not the favourite. If you can hang in there for a vintage bottle, great. Sometimes they're not overpriced because it's not the most sought-after vintage fragrance, but go online, get your Parfums Mythique one for under £30. I've smelt it, it's very, very close to this, and it's a beauty. So guys, that's it for today. Let me know what you thought of my list. Of course, there are loads of other powerhouses. I decided to leave out Drakkar Noir because it gives me more of a soapy vibe, not so much a powerhouse. But let me know which fragrances you think I should have included and what you thought of my picks. Don't forget, whatever you're doing in life, let's project. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.
Smelly.